Hey folks, this is an update and full build guide for my Elephant Tortoise, Infernal Legion, Gemling Legionnaire, Mercenary. I'm going to have a variety of videos in the background that showcases the build. What's playing right now is a max level Simulacrum, and I do complete this one, and you can kind of get an idea of like the boss damage and how good the clear is and whatnot. This build feels really good. You've got this big, massive elephant just coming in and just destroying everything around it. And because we're using Tame Beast, we do get some of the modifiers from the Beast. On this one, I've opted to go for Shroud Walker and increased area of effect. So Shroud Walker makes it so your minion teleports randomly to enemies, which is really nice. As soon as they kind of walk into your vision, your Beast teleports on top of them and starts burning them with the Infernal Legion aura. And then increased area of effect, that mod on monsters is 100% increased area of effect. And if you look on the tree, like there's not very many places where you can get minion AoE, and the numbers aren't very big, so that's like a huge deal. Now, if I had like a more optimized beast, I would like one with the added fire damage mod, extra fire damage. But honestly, getting an elephant tortoise with all of those mods is going to be very difficult because the only place you can like realistically or like consistently farm them is Crier Village, and it's a lower level zone. It's like level 60 something zone. So getting like 4 mod elephants isn't like super common, and you just spend hours in there farming. But you could do it. You could definitely do it if you wanted to. And then I haven't really seen them much in maps, so it is kind of a difficult thing to farm out. But yeah, I think you could probably make do with Shroud Walker plus one of either of those two, extra fire damage or ink AoE. And if you didn't get the ink AoE, you would just use the magnified area gem. Before I get into the gear and the skill tree, I just want to talk a bit about the pros and cons of the build. So we'll start off with some of the pros. So I think the biggest pro is that this build is like very tanky, and it just feels very consistent. Like you always have the same damage on the targets, it seems like. And it does decent boss damage. It has good clear. And actually, because in Path of Exile, ailment damage kills count as your kills, even if they come from minions, you can use on kill effects. So this build does make use of like mana on kill and percent life on kill, which makes clearing like really nice. Like you'll just see your life bar like flying up as you're killing packs of things. And then another thing I'm making use of in this build is some damage taken as mana and some recoup. So it does feel really smooth. As for cons, probably the biggest con is that you can't level as this build very easily because just doing minions on a Gemling Legionnaire in general is kind of painful. There's like no minion nodes around. You have to travel a really long time with a tree to get there. So you have to level as something else. You can switch to this build, I think, around level like 60-ish. Basically, as soon as you get yourself a Tame Beast gem and enough minion max fire res so that they don't kill themselves instantly, you can switch to this build. But I wouldn't recommend playing minions, so you almost have to just like look up some sort of leveling merc build to play, and that is a bit of a con. And then I think the other big con is that the movement speed is really low. However, I think that this is like a left side of the tree problem. It's not really specific to this build. It's just, it is what it is with like not having access to any movement speed nodes on the Ascendancy or on the left side of the tree. You just basically get your movement speed off your boots and that's it. And that's, there's not really anywhere else you can get a lot of movement speed from. So if you're looking for a zoom build, do a right side of the tree build. Don't play this build. All right, now that we've learned a little bit about the build, let's take a look at the passives and the gear. So we'll start off with the passive tree. Now this is a Gemling Legionnaire, and you might be wondering why go with Gemling Legionnaire when there's like a lot better minion ascendancies, especially on the top side here, because you can get all the extra minion nodes in here. And the reason for that is because the Tame Beast gem, if I look at it here, it is a dex gem. It has a 157 dex requirement. Now, dex is actually terrible for minion builds because if you look, dex just gives you accuracy. Accuracy doesn't really do anything for minions at all, and it just feels bad getting like 150 of a dead stat. It's a decent amount of investment just to get a dead stat. So with this node here, adaptive capability, you can use the attribute requirements of your gems can be satisfied by your highest attribute, which means you can use strength instead of dex. So I've got 235 strength here and 100 int. And then with this node, enhanced effectiveness, I get double the bonuses from these, but slightly less attributes. So instead of getting 1 strength equals 2 life, it's like 1 strength equals slightly less than 4 life, which is really good. So that allows me to stack a decent amount of life. I've got 3,600 life on this build. And I've also got some things that take life as mana, or damage as mana. So, and I've got a decent amount of mana, and part of that is because I get increased bonus from my int to mana as well. So from a defensive standpoint, this is a pretty good ascendancy for the build. It allows us to use strength to satisfy our tame beast instead of having to use dex, which is a terrible stat. And then you come over here and you get quality, which quality for tame beast is reservation efficiency, which is really nice. But the number isn't very high, so I would say this node is pretty bad. And then we get +2 to all types of skills of a certain attribute, and I chose Dex, so that means I can get 2 extra levels on my Tame Beast. And that brings our Tame Beast all the way up to level 32. So if you look here, Infernal Legion scales off the life of your minion, and so the more life you have, the more damage you do. And at a level 32, the Elephant Tortoise is able to get up to 84,000 maximum life. So it's dealing a quarter of that base as Ignite around it every second before any other scaling. So that's just like a huge amount of base Ignite damage. And of course, I've got a decent amount of minion max life to help scale it as well. These numbers, by the way, are lower than what you would get if you had like a Titan or something like that. But it's made up for the fact that you get extra like life on the base. Okay, so then how do we build the tree? Well, we're heading up towards the north side so that we can get the mana reservation efficiency. And then there's 2 kind of clusters here that are really important to get, like for the Infernal Legion part of the build. And one of them is right here, which is minions have ele res and 5 to max res. And then these nodes here give you fire res and max fire res, and these nodes over here give you res and max fire res. And then by the end of it, you should have like close to 90 max res. Let's see here. So yeah, 89 max fire max res on the tortoise. That allows it to like burn without having its health go down all the way. And then the cleric, the skeletal cleric here that's healing it, can keep up with the degen. And so everything else that we're taking is kind of like on the way. So I'll just kind of go through some of these things and my justification for taking them. This node here, hard to kill, gives you flask life recovery rate, which is really good. We're not doing life regen on this build. We're getting recoup, life on kill, and flask stuff. So we don't need to worry about taking any of like these types of nodes that give the increased life regen. Because I think in general, they kind of have not so great value unless you have like a lot of it. Feel no pain for the armor. And then you would come up here first. This is like this part down here that gives you like defense and armor and stuff. You would take this like later on, but you want to like basically zoom up here for the minion stuff as fast as you can. So there's some minion nodes here. I actually don't think that this like aura stuff is really worth taking because a lot of the auras don't really do anything for the minion. Then you want to take this wheel here. This just helps with minion reviving and minion damage, and minion health gives us damage. So both of those are really good. All right, other important nodes. You need to take Vile Mending because it gives the minion % life regen, which equates to a lot when you have the big life pool that the elephant has. This node here, Gigantic Following, makes your minions gigantic, which causes them to have 20% more max life, 20% more damage, and 20% increased size. You can get this on a skill gem as well, but getting it here saves you a support slot, so that's a really good pickup. And this node does kind of like double dip a little bit because you've got max life giving damage and more damage giving more damage. So this is a really good node. Adverse Growth gives you mana recoup. We take Ingenuity and Beef because they give us flat int and strength, which we get like increased effectiveness of because of our enhanced effectiveness passive. I anointed Mental Perseverance because I didn't want to travel all the way over here, but this is like a really good node. gives you damage taken from mana before life, but without the downside of Mind Over Matter. As for this defensive bit down here, this node here, Blade Catcher, is really insane because you get 200% of your armor every time you get crit. But the thing with armor now is armor also increases your reduction to elemental hits if you have the armor taken as. So if you look here at armor, I have 11,000 armor, but armor applied to elemental damage is actually higher because I've got enough of those mods that like I've gotten past 100%. So now I'm getting like increased effectiveness of my armor for Ellie hits, and then this doubles that. So you can imagine like if this is like roughly 1,500 or 15,000, that's like 30,000 armor for elemental hits on crits, which is like absolutely bananas. And then this node down here, I'm basically only took these two because I was already coming up here anyway for a jewel socket. But I do think that having the ailment threshold is kind of nice. So you get a little bit of stun threshold and a bit of ailment threshold. This just helps you get frozen and shocked less. Then for the jewels, you want to have minion area of effect on basically every jewel. And other things that are good are things like armor, defenses from shield, minion physical reduction, minion life, minion damage. I'll just kind of hover these so you can kind of see what they are. Right. Okay, so that's it for the skill tree. Let's take a look at the items. Now, the number one most important item is going to be your Sceptre. You want a Purity of Fire Sceptre, and the reason for this is because probably the hardest map mod is the one that curses you randomly with elemental weakness because it causes your minion to just burn down and die often. The other thing that's nice about getting the Purity of Fire here is you get a decent level of Purity of Fire. It gives you some relieves suffix pressure, and then you can get Chaos Res elsewhere on your build. So this is really useful. And then another thing that makes this really useful is that any supports that you socket in here don't have a spirit cost. So if you look, I've got Purity of Fire, but I've also got Cool-Headed and Warm-Blooded in here so that I get Ignited and Frozen less. I've got Herbalism so that I get a little bit more Flask effectiveness. And then the last one, you could have Vitality. When I'm mapping, I use Cannibalism for the life on kill. And then I just swap this out for Vitality if I'm bossing and the boss doesn't have any mobs on it. Like if there's no ads coming into the fight, then this is like basically useless. So just swap this out. So yeah, that's the Sceptre. You want the Purity of Fire Sceptre. And then as for mods on it, you want mana. You want allies, deal % increased damage. You need +4 to minion skills because that gives you base health for the minion. Minion increased max life is also relatively mandatory. And then there's a suffix that kind of doesn't really matter. You could have a mana regeneration rate. You could have int. Presence area of effect is really nice too. So there's a couple of things that you can do in that slot. And then you need a spirit roll. I would say like you need like at a minimum of like 135 spirit on this thing, or else it's going to be really hard to get all the things fit in that you need for the build. All right, then moving on to the next slot. Your helmet, you need +2. You want % armor, also applies to LA damage on basically all of your armor rolls or armor pieces. So you want that on your helm. Bonus if you can get it on your chest piece here, your body armor. You want it on your shield. You want it on your boots. I got the life per enemy killed here and some chaos res, so I didn't get it on this one. But if you could, if you can fit it in there, it's nice. You can't. I don't think you can get it on this slot here anyway. But yeah, you want to get chaos res as much as you can as well. And then you definitely want to try to get recoup on your build somewhere. So recoup is nice. And then for the rest of the stats on all these items, you're basically looking for res to just cap out your resistances, chaos res to try to get up as much as you can. I think I got mine up, 62%, so that's pretty solid. You want this 6% increased reservation efficiency talisman in the helmet because it helps you fit in everything into the build. I think I forgot to mention this. I put the presence area of effect on here. You can get the increased damage one, but I found that this one was like a little bit more useful. Like if you don't have it anywhere else in your build, this gets a lot of value, and I just haven't picked it up anywhere else, so it got a lot of value. Shield, you definitely want to get one with physical damage reduction on it if you can. And then you're looking for a high armor roll. For your amulet, you're looking for +3 to minion skills and then some reses. Percent increased armor is absolutely mandatory. It gives you a lot of value. It's hard to get percent increased armor without spending a lot of like skill points, which are like pretty strapped on this build as it is because you're traveling a lot. On your ring, you want to get some reses, strength, life, and if you can, you want to try to aim for rarity here, actually. So I've got rarity on this one, and I've got rarity on this one. This is kind of like a bougie thing. You don't need it. It's just, there's not very many other good prefixes. So if you can get rarity on the prefixes here, that's like a nice place to pick it up on the build. Boots, you absolutely mandatory need a 35% movement speed boost because you don't get movement speed anywhere else in this build, and it just feels bad if you don't have it. If you can get like reduced shock duration or reduced ignite duration, I feel like those are the two best. You want to get reduced flask charges used on your belt because that just helps you manage your flasks. As for the flasks, you definitely want to get the 0.25 charges per second on both of these, and then you want like an increased amount recovered roll or a more recovery when on low roll. For my charms, I went with anti-bleed, anti-poison, and anti-shock. But this shock one, you could probably make a good argument to get rid of this and pick up anti-ignite instead. Kind of just depends on like what content you're doing. Also, I noticed with simulacrums, there's a lot of things that freeze you, so it might be worth taking an anti-freeze in this slot if you're doing simulacrums a lot. One thing I forgot to mention about this shield, for the socket, I'm going with the Soul Core of Takaba. And the reason for that is because it just helps you take a little bit less damage from crits. And this, in conjunction with the node here that gives you the armor against crits, means that you're like not really taking that much damage from crits. Like crits aren't going to be killing you like outright often. For your chest piece, you definitely need to get a good spirit roll. I like to get reduced duration of bleeding. I feel like bleed is probably the most lethal thing for this build, simply because there's not very much physical damage reduction that doesn't come from armor, and armor doesn't apply to bleed. So you definitely want to get a reduced bleeding roll on your chest if you can. And chaos res is always good. Different reses are good, whatever you need to get capped out. And for the runes here, you want to get a percent increase life one, and you want to get a 10% damage is taken for mana before life one. This just helps bring you up to like, I think it's just like 24, 25%. That way, like a quarter of your damage comes to your mana first. And you don't want to go full mind over matter because we don't have enough regen to justify it, and you'll just be out of mana all the time. But just having a little bit taken off the top and going over here is nice because we get like a lot of, just recovery from life on kill, recoup, our flasks, so that like we can just make use of a little bit of damage coming over here, and that just helps give us a bit more of a effective hit pool. Okay, now that we've talked about the gearing and the skill tree, let's go through the gems and links real quick. So Purity of Fire, Cool-Headed, Warm-Blooded, Herbalism 2, and Cannibalism 2. Again, these things don't cost any spirit when they're in the Sceptre that has the aura on it. Alright, for our main setup, the Elephant Tortoise, we're going to have our Elephant Tortoise gem. You want to make sure that there's quality on that because it gives you reservation efficiency. Infernal Legion, that's like the core skill or support. Feeding Frenzy, because that's really good damage. This one, you can't really use this one until you get really good fire res because it starts making them burn more quickly. So you can use something else like a magnified effect in its place up until you get to that point. Searing Flame just increases the magnitude of the ignite. Muster, because it deals 7% more damage for each type of minion you have. That's resummoning, which we have 4, so that's 28% more damage. And then Minion Mastery, because it gives us +1 to level, and that just gives us a bit more base life. And then by the end of the build, you should have like around level 32. And pretty solid life pool. Alright, then we have Skeletal Storm Mage. This is for applying shocks. So we have our Skeletal Storm Mage. 100% more chance of shock with the shock support. Feeding Frenzy for more damage. Shock Conduction, so it spreads in an area. Lightning Exposures, this helps us get minus max res on the enemy as well. And Muster, and that just increases its damage as well. For the Skeletal Brute, this thing is doing kind of two things. It does stun sometimes, and it provides intimidation with its shout. So if I hover here, you can see a command Shattering Roar. It does intimidation for 4 seconds. And so intimidation does 10% increased damage taken and 10% reduced damage dealt. That's really nice. Okay, so we have muster for more damage, for more stuns. We have the duration increase for the command. We have bidding for the cooldown reduction, also for the command. Rapid attacks, just to get more attacks off, a little bit more damage. And stun 3 to get more stun buildup for when it does hit that big AoE stun thing. Skeletal Cleric is really important to have in the build because it heals your Tortoise, and without it, it would just slowly burn to death. So we've got our Skeletal Cleric. Rapid casting, so it casts faster. Meat Shield, so it takes less damage. Minion Mastery for more life. And Death March. And you could probably put something else here, but it's not really that necessary. Ellie Weakness. Now, you could go with Flammability. I like Ellie Weakness because it reduces the lightning res as well, and that helps with getting shocks on there. So Ellie Weakness reduces the Ellie res, so that's, reduces fire res on the enemy. Efficiency makes it cost less because it starts to cost a lot once you get all the supports on there. Magnified area, so that you get a bigger area. So it's like that bigger, so with the magnified area. Rapid casting, so you can do it quicker. Heightened curse, so that its magnitude is higher. And duration, for increased duration. Then you've got time of need. And the reason I use this is mainly just for removing curses and elemental elements. And actually, I should probably have a little bit more quality on this, but I'll get to that later. And then you want compressed duration on it, because that makes it go off more frequently and then cleanse you more frequently. And then lastly, we have Tame Beast. Now, the reason I keep this on the bar is in case I come across another one of these guys and I want to capture it. And you want to have prolonged duration on this one. And the way it works is you use it, you put it on the elephant, and as long as you kill the enemy while the debuff is on it, it's got a 14-second duration if you've got a high level one. As long as you kill it while it's on, the duration thing is on it, it'll get captured. All right, let's quickly talk about how to craft the scepter that's like this. Now, I said earlier in the video that the Purity of Fire is what you want to go for. Purity of Fire is the most expensive base. What you want to do is you want to find yourself a blue base that looks like this. It's got +4 level of minion skills and then a mana roll on it. And you can do this with any Shrine Scepter. It doesn't have to be the Purity of Fire one. Purity of Fire one is the most expensive. So if you wanted to do a budget option, you could do the Purity of Cold or Purity of Lightning, and it'll save you like a lot of money. The main thing is that it's item level 82 plus, and the reason for that is that's where the highest percent increased spirit is. All right, so what are the steps? The steps, you start off by making this rare with a greater essence of command. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead, hit that. Okay, so now we have mana, the damage, and the minion skills. And honestly, the nice thing about this is you can never really truly brick this, because if you started it even here, you could just use this in the early end game and it would be fine, and then you can get like a better thing later on. But okay, so then what do we do next? Now, if you look here, we have 2 prefixes and a suffix, and I want to have a higher chance of getting spirit. So what I want to do is I want to desecrate this, but I want to make sure that it's a prefix. So you use this Omen of Sinstral Necromancy. I think that these are about 10x or so they're not like super expensive. And then that forces your Jawbone to put a prefix, a desecrated prefix on it. Now, if you're using a really expensive base, like this base is expensive, I'll use a nicer Jawbone on it to ensure that I get like better minimum modifier level desecrates. So then the next thing to do here is to desecrate it. I'm going to use the nicer one. You can use the cheaper one. Okay. Then we're going to go and unveil it and see what we got. And since we did use that really expensive Jawbone, you definitely want to use one of these Omen of Abyssal Echoes because it gives you a reroll. Okay, so we're hoping for Spirit. Percent Spirit. Honestly, I'll take anything over like 35%. Okay, there it is. 47% increased Spirit. This is already shaping up to be better than my current one if I hit the right suffixes. Okay, so yeah, like right there, that's a very, very usable Sceptre. Okay, then the next step, what I've been doing is I've been perfect Xing it. If I at this point it's got all of these nice rolls, I'll perfect X it to see if I can hit something decent on a suffix. And if I didn't hit something good, I'll just greater exit to sell it. And that's why, if you look, let me go back to my hideout here. Okay, so if you look at my sales tab here, you can see. So I actually started doing this craft on a Rattling Scepter base earlier before I started switching to Shrine Scepter. But you can see I've got some decent sales here. So like here's a 12D one. Let me see. Here's a 4D. 4D again. Here's a 10D Shrine Scepter sale. Here's a 5D. Here is a 10D one from a Rattling Scepter. And I've got a couple of like really nice ones, like 50D plus ones in here that they haven't quite sold yet, but they will eventually when a whale comes on. Anyway, the purpose of showing you this was just to say that even if you don't get the rolls that you want, you can usually salvage the Scepter and sell it to get money to buy the materials to try to create a new one. It's very rare that you completely brick it, and the only way that you brick it is if you just like don't hit any spirit rolls, and even then you can if the other rolls on it are actually really good, you can always use an Omen of Light if they're like if the rest of the Scepter is like good enough to justify it. You can use an Omen of Light to re-roll the Desecrate to get the spirit on there. So like none of these are ever really truly completely bricked. Okay, so anyway, then from there, at that point, the next thing to do is just to hit it with a perfect X. Okay, I got an int roll. That's pretty good, honestly. A T1 int. Okay, so I think I'll probably buy another perfect X and then hope I hit like the minion life. And if I hit the minion life, it's done. And if I don't hit the minion life, then I'm gonna start this process again. Like assuming that I didn't have one of these, I would be starting this process again. And then I would be just selling this item to like recoup the costs so that I could try again. Okay, I got my perfect X. I'm gonna go ahead and slam it. All right, and I got percent increased Ellie Res. This is actually not a bad roll. It's not as good as the life, but it's like still a pretty usable roll for somebody else who's playing minions. And honestly, this is a pretty nice Scepter for somebody who's playing minions. Like if I look at this, let's see what this is worth. 147 Spirit with the increased damage, with the +4, and then the allies with Ellie Res. You're looking at like 70. So like you're getting your money back. Actually, it's probably a little bit more than that. Yeah, it's probably a little bit more than that because you're getting the purity as well. Get a Shrine Scepter one. Yeah, it's probably like in the 15D range. Anyway, the point is you don't often lose money doing this just because with the perfect X, you're guaranteeing like some decently high tier mods. And then at the very worst, you're getting a Scepter that has the mana, the damage, the +4, and very likely Spirit, and that's usable for your build. And you can cut down on the costs by just using greater X instead of perfect X, and by using a cheaper base that's not as high of an item level, and that can just make it so rather than being a 7D craft, it's like, 1 or 2D craft. Can really make it a lot cheaper. Okay, let's talk about the weapon swap tech for a second. Now, I don't know if this weapon swap tech is going to stay in the game for very long, but I'll just mention it just because I know people in the comments will say, like, why aren't you using this? Basically, what you can do is you can put your companion skill only on your second swap. And then what you do is you set these to be locked to only use your main setup. So it keeps, no matter what weapon swap you're using, you're just always using your Scepter and your shield. And then when you swap, what it does is it desummons your your tortoise here, because it's not on the like one weapon swap, the eye weapon swap. And then when you hit it again, it comes back. And what it does is that it makes it come back to your position. So say you're like super far away from it and you want to like resummon it on you, you can just double tap it really quick and then it'll come back to you. And that can be really useful. However, I don't know if this is like, you know, fully intended. GGG has said like varying things about convocation in the past, saying like they weren't sure if they wanted to put convocation back in the game. So I don't know if this is going to stick around, but in the meantime, if you need to reposition your guy, that's a good way to do it. You can just hit your thing, double tap, bring him to where he needs to be, and it summons him at full health too. So if he's about to die, you can do it. But if he dies and then you do it, it still has that like 5-second lockout. So you want to definitely try to do it before they die if you're like trying to maximize efficiency on like keeping your dude alive and active. All right, well, that's pretty much it for the video. What I'm going to do is, at the end of the video here, I'll just put some runs of various bosses that I've done. I've killed lots of the bosses on the, like, max 150 shards, whatever, the, like, max tier. So I'll put a couple of those at the end of the video just to show you that it can indeed do those things. If you have any questions, just write them down in the comments below. And if you made it this far, please like and subscribe because it really helps the channel. Channel's just reached 1,300 subs, and I'm trying to grow it a little bit more. So every little bit helps. Thanks, guys.